Our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science.
Elizabeth, New Hampshire.
Elizabeth from New Hampshire, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for the beautiful service. The Wednesday testimony meetings have become a high point in my week. Listening to the readings and the testimonies is so uplifting. I was recently recalling an experience that I had when my second child arrived. The doctor delivering her said there was a very serious life-threatening complication, and the doctor, knowing that I was a Christian Scientist, asked my mother as she entered the room to call the practitioner. He then announced, "Your mother is here," to me, to which my mother immediately stated, "The Christ is here," meaning that it was of no great significance that my so-called human mother had arrived, but the important thing was that the Christ, the message of God, was ever present and right where the trouble seemed to be. Within about 20 minutes' time, the doctor reevaluated and reported that everything had moved into its proper place. The birth process was very smooth and harmonious, and a beautiful baby emerged. God is indeed a very present help in trouble. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Day from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thankful for the spiritual training I'm getting through the study of Christian Science in this church. Everything I'm reading and learning is helping me to progress continuously, and every day offers an experience for me to realize how much I'm growing by God's grace. I've learned to naturally thank God for every single thing, the abundant good, as well as the challenges, which always serve as learning experiences, offering opportunity for healing as I go throughout the day. And in turn, I'm developing the ability to better hear him as he speaks to me. The value that hearing my Father's clear messages moment by moment is adding to my life is immeasurable. It's enabling me to better trust in and follow his guidance and obey his direction with a confidence more powerful than any human opinion. And I'm forever grateful for this tremendous blessing, which is proof of his constant care for me and all his children. Everything I'm learning is helping me to better serve others in my personal and professional experience. Thank you so much for tonight's readings and for all that's going on in this church that's blessing me in some way every day. I'm very grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Ella from Canada, go ahead.
Thank you. December 25th is a landmark for me. Previously, I tried humanly to please the whole family with minimum successes. This time, I decided to invite the family of mankind, not only my personal family. I had 12 people to come for the meal, 2 who were Mexicans with whom we had to converse through Google Translate. They rent my grown-up children's rooms. 2 others were a couple who are Russian and Ukrainian with a 2-month-old baby. 2 others were Vietnamese who had booked our B&B room. They also didn't always know how to speak English well, but they cooked and cooked whatever they brought. It was just delightful, a cooking lesson in the midst of the day. 3 other friends came who are Polish and Canadian. My son, who lives in Texas, also came home. My daughter could not come home because the roads were closed by the police, since the roads were icy and dangerous to travel on. I cooked up the storm. However, others brought food and desserts. Abundance was overflowing. The home was lively, with everyone trying to get to know each other regardless of language. This was the best Christmas I have ever experienced, focusing on opening our hearts to the family of mankind, and not only to our immediate personal families. It has opened the door to spiritual happiness for all. I do not plan to go back to my outgrown sense of family and Christmas. Thank you so much, Plainfield, for all kinds of wonderful demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty.
Betty from California, go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to say thank you for the music and also for the readings. And I'd like to express gratitude for the healing of knee pain. This also has to do with Christmas. Several days before Christmas, I was doing some baking for a Christmas meal with friends that I was to attend that day on Christmas. By Christmas Day, I found my knee was becoming uncomfortable. The next day, I was taking it easy and thought it would help. By Tuesday morning, I finally realized it wasn't getting better, but worse. I had thought I had been prayed up before I went for Christmas dinner. Then the thought came that I didn't have to be at the effect of a false sense of Christmas or a false sense of family. I have dominion over it, God's dominion. I had been working with chapter 62, Handling the Weather, from Mary Baker Eddy, Her Spiritual Footsteps by Gilbert Carpenter. While he doesn't talk about Christmas, he does talk about dominion. Mr. Carpenter asks, quote, "What must one do to regain his birthright of supremacy? Must he not recognize his dominion over the universe as the Son of God, and then establish himself as a channel so that the normal government of the universe by the divine power," he reflects, "will become an evident fact. With that, the discomfort began to go away." Later that morning, I called a practitioner from the Plainfield Church, and she reminded me that I also needed to handle age, which I did. And my knee was back to normal in a couple of days. I am so grateful for this experience. I am very grateful for the Plainfield Church and for Mary Baker Eddy. And I'm also very grateful for the Daily Watch this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
My gratitude this week is for the lessons I have learned from a recent physical issue that started the Wednesday before Christmas. What began as twinges in my lower back, hip, and leg early that day became incredibly painful during my ride into church. I've rarely had such physical issues in my life, and so I began to work with what I have learned here, namely that this is an attack against the church work and is a false claim on me. My practitioner gave me many things to work with, such as the treatment for pain and teaching and addresses on Christian Science by Edward Kimball. And she also told me to be sure I am not sitting at my desk too long and to watch my posture, among other things. There has been a steady lessening of the pain as the past weeks have gone on, but I have been very grateful to be able to demand the blessing from this, learning not to humanly push through as I would have in the past, and also to be sure to keep my thought right and not allow any attempts to explain this with human knowledge has been very helpful. And after a few days, I realized that there was a difference in the way I approached this issue in contrast to how I have handled any supposed symptoms from the nameless nothing. Having that be called nothing by my practitioner from pretty much the moment it came into the public consciousness has been very helpful, as she clearly taught it is something we must not be mesmerized by. This recent pain, however, had some bit within me that accepted it as something more, which needed more to work against it. Once I was able to see that it was not from God, therefore not real, its hold has been quickly diminishing. What a blessing Christian Science and practitioner support is. I'm so grateful now to be able to have a little more insight into what Paul meant when he wrote in 2 Corinthians 12:10, quote, "Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong." End quote. Thank you. And now we have a testimony from Imogen in Australia.
Good evening. It's remarkable to me how patient and loving and kind is our God, and what a different individual I was when Christian Science first saved me. There are many healings I have lived through in my journey, but I would like to share one example here of how God's holy power saved me directly through the operation of Christian Science. Many years ago, the hatred of the world had all but defeated me. It certainly had defeated the human self. One fine day, error came to me in such an overwhelming fashion that I planned and decided to take my human life. All was in order. I opened the window of the high-rise that I was living in and climbed halfway outside the building when my phone rang. Humanly, the ringtone was a deafening sound because the inner turmoil and grief was so loud to my own thought. Each ringtone pulled my thought back enough to clarity that the rank error pretending that love was only accessible on the other side became still enough that I could stop and climb back into my home to answer this phone call. Well, it was none other than a holy practitioner here in Australia, a person who did not go in for social phone calls at all. So the timing of this call, that it was a holy man of God calling me, clanged into my consciousness. Without too much of a hello to open the conversation, he said with absolute holy power, "You will not hurt Imogen. Imogen is God's child, and there is a grand purpose in store for Imogen." Well, I just broke down and sobbed. This was exactly what I needed to hear, that there is a grand purpose that can be experienced here on earth, and that God's love is here for all of us. I was then given hymn 192 to work with, verse 4, quote, "Then with my waking thoughts, bright with thy praise, out of my stony griefs Bethel I'll raise. So by my woes to be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee." That hymn, that practitioner saved me that day. I am so grateful to that pure practitioner who listened to God's direction, who called me that day. Through this experience, I learned that when material sense is at its cruelest, then is our dear Father nearest to us, our best and ever friend, as my dear Plainfield practitioner at this church often says. I am so grateful to have found this pure, independent Christian Science church. We are taught to come out fighting against error in our own thought. We are taught here truly that anything other than God's divine love is an error. The truth of God taught here has saved me and my husband also many times. We are very grateful for the holy prayers of our Plainfield practitioner. My deepest love to our Lord God Almighty, my ever thanks to Christ Jesus and to Mary Baker Eddy, and the holy strength of our Plainfield practitioner. Thank you all so very much, and so much love to you all.
And now we have a testimony from Patricia in Canada.
I'm reading from my diary, 1984. The mother of one of my young Sunday school students approached me to ask me to pray for her daughter. She explained that the girl was very seriously accident-prone, and that over the past 6 months had been injuring herself so frequently that the school nurse had called to express extreme concern. There seemed to be fear that although the child was intellectually quite bright, there might be an emotional, mental, or physical disorder. The youngster's friends were also very worried for her. The mother said that she had been praying without any apparent improvement. Each evening I prayed vehemently. I dismissed the idea that accidents could occur, since God, the one divine mind, would never cause them. Rather, man is prone to freedom, integrity, and purity, which cannot be hypnotized. God is the great physician, and there could be no influence from any source but God good. God's infinite child has never been observed by finite medical studies and reports, never been categorized or viewed as a statistic, because false belief has no sense of the true spiritual child as God's very own reflection, and false belief cannot possibly measure infinity. Each step of God's children is ordered by divine mind and love. This eliminates any possibility of mental malpractice, whether well-meaning or aggressive. In principle, there's just no such thing as disorder. By the third day, I happily knew that God's child, like God, was never born into matter and so has no age. There's no such thing as 7-year-old truth. There are no stages or states of awkwardness in God. There's only His grace expressing Himself. By the following Sunday before class, the mother said that I could stop praying because everything was quite normal and no one seemed to be thinking about it anymore. All praise be to God for this. Thank God for the Plainfield Church's energetic teaching of Christian Science and its vibrant spiritual example. Good evening.
Thank you.
Nancy, New Jersey.
Nancy from New Jersey, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the inspiring readings tonight on Man of God's Creation is Spiritual. I loved how it blended so beautifully with our lesson this week on life. In this week's lesson, Mrs. Eddy states, man is not the offspring of flesh, but of spirit, of life, not of matter. I am always amazed how beautifully our weekly lessons and our Wednesday readings connect, expressing the oneness of mind that is demonstrated here in Plainfield in all that we are taught and given. I just wanted to express my gratitude to all who write these lessons that enrich and inspire me every week, enhancing my understanding and my study of the Bible and science and health. I'm so grateful to God for this church. I'm so grateful for Christ Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy and her pure Christian Science that we're taught here in Plainfield. I'm very grateful for the strong support of my practitioner, which is helping me to gain a clearer understanding of this science and to strive to live these teachings in my daily life. And I'm very grateful for all the wonderful testimonies given tonight and every week that are a source of comfort and inspiration to me, and I know to all. I'm so grateful to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
First of all, thank you, Ms. Sheila, for those fine readings on our spiritual heritage, not material. I recently testified about a change I made a few years ago in my business where I was led by God, with the help of a Christian Science practitioner, to make a major change, selling my business to a much bigger company, which is something that we really needed to do, and how it worked out so well for all parties concerned under God's guidance. Well, there's more to that story, and I'd like to share another part of that experience for anybody that might benefit from it. We sold our business to a company based in Switzerland that had offices around the world, and most of the people that I was going to have to learn to work with were either in Zurich or London or Dublin, Ireland, or other offices around the world, people that I would never meet in person, but would have to work with. And there were all these computer and communications systems for us to use that I would have to learn how to use. There were passwords for all of them that I would have to learn and keep somewhere. In other words, it was a huge change for me. And there were, at times, all of this newness really seemed very overwhelming. And there were a couple times where I even wondered if I had made a huge mistake. But I would remember that this change was a provision from God. And every time that I felt overwhelmed, I would remember that God provided it and that He would give me the strength and whatever else I needed to see me through. And very often when I would feel overwhelmed, I would just find a quiet spot and pray to God and ask Him to show me what was really important and to give me the strength and the intelligence to do what I really needed. And then I would often remember what my practitioner said about this move, and that was that the sole purpose of this change was for spiritual growth. And that would always just calm me and put everything in the right perspective. And as a result, I did make it through the change and did learn to work with everybody I needed to and worked very, very well. And I gained a much closer bond with God along the way, for which I'm very grateful. So I'm so grateful to Mary Baker Eddy for giving us the science of Christianity, which governs every aspect of our lives. And it is harmony when we put God in control. And I'm so grateful to be learning this, so grateful to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings tonight. I want to express my gratitude for a recent healing that I had with the support of a practitioner. I had swelling in my feet, and I had to switch shoes to that one pair I could wear. And it wasn't comfortable, and it sometimes felt very alarming and made walking difficult. She had me work with hymn 139, I Walk with Love Along the Way. And I would often sing that to myself, especially going up the stairs and walking to my car. But I also found that I wasn't being firm in my thought and standing up to this, and I got firm with it, even stomping my feet. And also, she also gave me other assignments, like reading the daily, it's a paper that's put out by the daily list of all the different things that Mary Baker Eddy had in prayers. It's on our website. And I also was working with the book on contagion and doing more watches and getting very involved in that. And I know that helped a lot. And I don't even know when the swelling went away. But I looked down one day thinking how skinny my feet looked. And I realized it's because the swelling had gone down. And I was so grateful. And I can wear all my shoes now. And I just having these simple prayers were such a blessing, just even to him. And I'm very grateful for her prayers and patience and work and instructions and being part of this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig.
Those readings were tremendous. And I believe it was Miss Shahila said, the light shine in darkness, and the darkness comprehended not. And I found in this church where it finally makes sense that God persists, and that even though the light shined in darkness, and he didn't stop shining in the darkness. He just continued and overturned, blessed more and more, loved more and more, healed and helped more and more, till there was no darkness. And that's this church in my life, too. Because when I came to Christian Science, there appeared to be a reality to the bad stuff. And I had a healing of panic attacks. I wasn't taking drugs or anything, but I was having fearful panic attacks. And I had known the practitioner here and teacher here at the time. And for my own safety, I was admitted to a hospital. And well, she worked for me, and I could just basically rest and feel safe. Didn't know why or how it happened, but God was no part of it. Well, soon as after I started getting some rest, I heard a thought, and I knew it was God, and it said, "Work for me." And I said, "I will." Soon after I left the hospital, and under the guidance of the teacher, I learned to find my peace and to keep it by listening to God, realizing when he's talking and when he's not, singing hymns that kept my thought loving him and other people, and being about good things that were going on here, whether it be a work party or helping someone else. And my life changed greatly, and I learned to believe in the reality of good, not evil. In hymns that he says, page 306, line 25, undisturbed amid the jarring testimony of the material senses, science, still enthroned, is unfolding to mortals the immutable, harmonious, divine principle, is unfolding life in the universe, ever present and eternal. So anything that's not that, I didn't want to be involved with. And if I stood long enough and with the right people, it disappeared. My life was successful. And I thank God for the absence, kicking out of fear. When the light keeps shining, you just no more need to be afraid. So I just thank God that we have a science that we can stand with until the situation is healed, whatever the situation is. And then we can go about our productive way of doing good. This is a great place for anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening. I would like to offer my gratitude for this church and the outreach of the testimonies given on Wednesday evenings. One grandson is a young graduate who is teaching English to fourth graders in what looks like a large and beautiful school in Thailand. He expressed the concern that not knowing their language was a big problem with communication, and he felt like he wasn't doing a good job. I told him about a testimony concerning a language barrier problem, and the person prayed with the idea of love from the little book, The Greatest Thing in the World by Henry Drummond. I told him it's all about love, and that I knew he loved the children, and it would unfold for him, and I suggested that he look up the book. Well, I did not hear anything about this for several days, so I asked him about the language issue, and he replied, "Oh, it's going well." And that was it. No details, not much. He told me that he could count to 10 in Thai now, and that he had found some friends at the school who spoke English. My heart overflows with gratitude for the Wednesday services, with the readings and the music and the testimonies that go out and help and heal all mankind all over the globe. God's love is indeed infinite, with a capital I.
Thank you. Mary.
Good evening, everyone. A few things to read tonight, some left from last week. The first from Virginia. Thank you, Plainfield, for the beautiful testimonial meeting, and that was last Wednesday. Thank you for the improved audio system. I can hear the difference. Thank you to all who gave testimonials. What a gift you all are giving to all. And then Pennsylvania. Thanks for the countless forms of help in 2022, especially roundtables and Bible studies in the middle of the night. And this is a little letter from someone new in Wisconsin. Hello, friends. Your website has been a continual inspiration to me. I have grown and solidified in my faith, and I'm just starting to wish I could live in Plainfield. But I will just have to settle for living and making and having my being in God, and to remember the fresh embraces and smiles of you all. Have a very Merry Christmas. How blessed we are that Christ is born anew in us every moment, by conscious moment. With this first check, I begin a conscious union with you all, truly. Blessings on your church, and I look forward to growing with you now and forever. And this is a testimony from Oklahoma. I have been dealing with the false belief of COVID or perhaps flu for several days. I realized I needed the help of a practitioner and contacted one at the Plainfield Christian Science Church. She agreed to help me and asked me to go to the Plainfield website and listen to something entitled Contagion. I listened several times, and that is by Mrs. Eddy. I listened several times. I also listened to several other articles on the website. The Plainfield Christian Science website is a very valuable resource for truth, free to everyone. I was listening to Dorothy Ricky's article, Wonderful Things Are Happening, and it was reiterated that God fills all space, so there is no room for anything else. This clicked with me. I realized I was somehow giving disease space. This seemed to break the hypnotism, and I was free. Sometimes hearing something you already know in a new way awakens you. I'm very grateful to Christian Science and for the dedicated prayers of the practitioner. Also thankful for Mary Baker Eddy, her dedicated devotion to bringing Christian Science to all mankind. I truly appreciate the Plainfield Church and the workers contributing their time and effort to its success. The website is especially appreciated. Thanks to you all. And then this is from South Dakota. Thank you to all at Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent for your faithful presentation of the Christ. I appreciate the work and love for the Word demonstrated by the Bible Lesson Committee and readers. Much gratitude and love for all the workers there. I always find much food for thought in the Daily Watch, too. So the work for eternity goes on, while our gratitude for having a purpose is expressed. Thank you all. And then North Carolina. On this quiet morning, with rain tumbling down, I feel the warmth and love of true Christian Science blessing my footsteps, my speech, and actions as I go about my day. I never thought this possible, to be rescued from the chaos of mortal mind to the peace and understanding of divine love meeting every need. We made it through the holidays with grace and with the inspiration and confidence that with God all things are possible. Many thanks and continued gratitude for the steadfastness of Plainfield Christian Science and its ever-expansive presence in my life. And then one more note of appreciation is for the collection of writings on true government. I have sent this to my dearest friend in Florida, and she is thrilled to have it to study. For all the contributions to the website and continued elucidation of Christian Science, we are very thankful to all. And then this short note from Holland. Very blessed and happy Christmas to everyone there in the Plainfield Church. Thank you very much for all your effort. And then this from England. The following poem by Minnie Louise Haskins was quoted by King George VI in his 1939 Christmas Day broadcast to the British people, and I will excerpt from it. The name of the poem is God Knows. And God said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, "Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown." And he replied, "Go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way." So I went forth, and finding the hand of God, trod gladly into the night, and he led me towards the hills and the breaking of day in the lone east. God knows, his will is best. The stretch of years which wind ahead so dim to our imperfect vision are clear to God. Our fears are premature in him. So tonight, I'm very grateful for those beautiful readings about man being spiritual. Such a good thing to think about and remember. And I loved how it was ended. As many as received him, to them he gave power to become the sons of God. What a tremendous blessing that is. As we receive the Christ into our hearts, we have that just amazing power, amazing grace to become the sons of God. Something to be so very grateful for. So I'm very grateful to be with you all tonight, to hear the beautiful readings, the hymns, music, and thank you all for your testimonies, and have a good night.
Thank you.